Do you have resentment towards your biological father? Do you feel now as an adult, if your father is still alive, that your relationship is now estranged? Do you feel like there were certain things that happened in your childhood that you witnessed your father do that is now affecting you as an adult? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you are dealing with father wounds. Father wounds come from an absent father, and the children felt a lack of love from a parental figure. Father wounds can come from divorce, never knowing your real father, or living with a father that didn't give affection or enough emotional support. Father wounds also come from witnessing abuse of your other siblings, witnessing abuse of your mother. All of this was traumatizing for you, and it created a sort of different dynamic that shifted between you and your father, and you may have viewed your father ever so differently since you've seen your father's true colors. When this happens, a child can grow up with very low self esteem, but this dynamic can be intentional or unintentional. Children that are affected by these wounds are more likely to have behavioral issues. This is learned behavior due to what they have witnessed in their own household, absorbing everything like a sponge. Father wounds are also caused by kids watching their father abuse their mother. If they saw their father physically hit their mother, it was a very traumatizing thing because you hear a man should not hit a woman, but in their own household, they're seeing a man hit a woman constantly. It can cause confusion within a child, thinking, well, if this is my father, if he's doing it, does that make it okay? And this can cause a child that will grow up to put their hands on women, or a child that will say, I'm not going to be like my father. I'm going to do it the exact opposite and never put my hands on a woman. It also could come from their father being violent or aggressive in the household. If the father ever came home intoxicated and got very violent, or if the father just was naturally a very aggressive person when he was angry, this is another way that can cause father wounds because anything that they view with the masculine is resulted to anger and frustration, aggression, hostility. There's so much violence, so much anger and wrath and rage coming from a male figure that it can cause those children to revert into such a small hermit turtle shell state whenever another male is raising their voice at them. It's a trauma response. If you're a person and you don't like people yelling at you, especially male figures, you have a father wound from your father being very violent or aggressive or loud or rageful in your home. Another reason for father wounds is seeing their father cheat on their mother. Now, even if you may not have physically seen your father with another woman, but if you grew up and you knew that your father was seeing other women, or you just had maybe you even heard conversations, but somehow within your childhood, you knew that your father was cheating on your mother, it caused a sense of distrust for your father because you're thinking, if you're causing my mother all of this pain, what kind of father is that? What kind of man is that? So, a lot of how the father treats your mother can cause a lot of those father wounds because you are seeing someone hurt someone that you love and care about. Another way for father wounds is fathers mistreating their children. If the fathers are playing favoritism with certain children, some kids, they will like one child or certain children are given more privileges. The father is kinder to them, the father is more attentive to them and treats them better, but on the other hand treats the other siblings different, and you can see a visible difference in the way that the father treats them and what they allow. And that can cause some wounds because it can create the child to think, well, what have I done wrong? What is the problem with me? A child can start to think of what they have done within their own life as to, or what have they done to their parent to cause their parent to not favor them. And it's, it of course is sad and unfortunate for kids to think that, but as a child, when you are not fully mature yet, you would not think of something from a higher perspective of what could the father be going through as to why they would do this to their children. Instead, because if it's happening to you, you will internalize it and point the mirror back at yourself and think, what is wrong with me, instead of turning the mirror at your parent and thinking, what is going on with them. So oftentimes, when dealing with father wounds, children can be very hard on themselves. They can start to dislike themselves or disapprove of themselves because of how their father has treated them. If their father doesn't want to speak to them or come around them, or if their father left, they may think, well, was it my fault that my father left? And I'm here to tell you, if you ever thought that, it was not your fault. Whatever your father did was not your fault. Your father was a grown man that made his own decisions, and you were just a child. He was a grown man and chose to make those decisions. And he clearly did not put his own children and family into consideration. He only chose himself. That is his choice and his responsibility. It's not your fault. And I know this may differentiate from what you've been telling yourself growing up, but I'm here to tell you, ditch that narrative. It was not your fault. It was not your fault. Okay? Another way that children can have father wounds is the father displaying aggression in the household. So if the father communicated where he didn't necessarily talk to his children, he talked at them. He would raise his voice, he would yell, or he would degrade his children and belittle them for when they did not oblige from what he said. Anytime a father displayed verbal, emotional, or physical aggression in the household, all of that is traumatizing. And witnessing this in your childhood, in your home, messes up a child. And this is what creates those father wounds within you. Now, how can father wounds manifest into adulthood? Well, it will result in the, like, let's say for young men, for example, young men will revert to violence and aggression if they have not healed themselves. This can manifest in a young man growing up and having his own family and not knowing how to be a proper husband, not knowing how to be a good father because that was not molded to him. And then there's a lot of conflict that goes on between the spouse because the man does not know exactly how to be a husband and how to be a husband to his wife, and it's causing the wife frustration and anger, and she's being patient with him, but she cannot teach him something that he has to learn on his own. So another way that this can manifest is men being emotionally unavailable. Being emotionally unavailable. When a man is emotionally unavailable, he is not allowing himself to receive love, receive true, genuine love. He may revert to, promiscuity or being with other women that is only around just for what he can do for them. And a sometimes a man can feel that sense of power by providing for someone, providing for a woman, even though the emotional connection is very distant. It's not really there. There's no emotional bond. But the man, in order to make himself feel good, in order to validate himself and to gain his power back as a masculine, as a man, he feels, if I'm in power, if I'm providing, then I'm manly. But his emotions are not there. And when a man is emotionally unavailable and people come into his life to love him genuinely and unconditionally, he may run away from it. He may not want to accept it because he is not sure what true love, what true genuine unconditional love looks like, because he has been deprived of it. And these wounds can create so many issues in dating and relationships or friendships. Now, when it comes to women, what father wounds can do to a girl that grows up to be a woman is she has trouble trusting men or discerning which men are good and which men are bad. Because if the man in her life that she saw as her father in her household displayed such behaviors, because that is what was modeled to her, when men come across her life, she's going to start to attract men into her life that resemble her father. And if that was the norm in her life, she may gravitate towards those type of men, not knowing how toxic they can be and how hurtful they can be to her life and how detrimental they can be to her own mental health. It may also cause issues where, because she does not fully know how men are and what a good man looks like and what can't differentiate between the two, this can result in her having issues within her own relationship. She can get into abusive relationships. She can have moments where she can experience, sexual assault or rape molestation because she has not learned fully what should happen and how a man should treat her and how a man should not treat her. Because if the father was absent and was not there to the teach his daughters the male species and what men are like, so that way she can know when she goes out into the world as an growing adolescent or a young lady or into a woman, because she was not taught that as a child by her father figure. She's out there trying to learn this all on her own, and she can get herself into situations that could have been prevented if the proper teaching and wisdom was given to her. And sometimes when these things happen, it's a little too late because the father was absent as these children were kids, where they were younger. By the time they become an adult, that foundation was already set. Everything was already set in stone. And she went out there with the mindset of what she developed into. And when she experiences these things, it's too late. She can't change the past. She cannot change what has happened. Only thing she can do now is learn from them. So it's not to say that whatever happens to the girl or the young woman is the father's fault, because whoever has, if she's in a toxic relationship or if she ever experiences sexual assault, it's the fault of the person that did it to her. However, what can prevent moments like that, and what she can learn and know on what to do and what not to do when dealing with the male species, is if her father taught her exactly how men are. But if the father himself was toxic, he's not going to teach his daughter about toxic men because he is one. Remember that. And lastly, how can we heal from these father wounds? The first step to healing from your father wounds is to first parent yourself. Parent yourself. Even if you are a woman or even if you're a man, you can still father yourself. Parent yourself and give yourself the love that a father would give to his child. When you learn how to parent yourself, you are giving yourself the love that you have always wanted, always craved, and always deserved to receive. Because although your parents were not able to give you this, they could not give you what you couldn't have. But you have tapped into yourself and you know that you have everything that you need existing already within you. And all you have to do is tap into it and give yourself that love, and then boom, you no longer need the love from your father. You're no longer chasing the love and the acceptance from your father, because you can give it to yourself. It's a tough thing to do. It's very much easier said than done. But with dedication and with practice, you can do it. Next, accept your father for who he is and do not accept any radical changes. Do not expect. Accept your father for who he is and do not expect any radical changes. Eventually, when a father or an adult gets to a certain age, they will not change their ways. They are very much stuck in their ways. And if you have a parent that is very stuck in their ways, you have to leave them where they are. If they are still in the same mindset and the same maturity level as they were 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, there's nothing that you can do about that. They have chosen to stay in that repetitive cycle. They have chosen to stay on that hamster wheel. And you have to accept your father for who he is. Even if you may not like everything about him, accept him for who he is. You don't have to like everything. You don't have to condone everything. But the acceptance is key. Accept your father for who he is and handle him accordingly. And accept your father for where he is. Do not try to change him. Trying to change your father is only going to frustrate you. And expecting your father to have radical, miraculous changes in such a short length of time is a little bit far-fetched. Do not expect any changes, because a person can only change when they are willing to. And if he has displayed patterns of not wanting to change throughout his life, what makes you think he's going to change now? And if he does not want to change, that is his problem and it's not yours. It's not your burden to carry. That's his burden. Another thing is, do not carry the burdens of your parents. Do not. Whatever happened to your parents within their life, within their marriage, within your childhood, is their issues and it's not your burdens. Now, the next step to healing father wounds is to forgive your father for what he did and didn't do. For whatever your father did to you growing up as a child, any type of abuse that he has given you, the key is to forgive your father for what he did. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If you have difficulty forgiving your father for what he has done, that is okay. Another thing is, do not rush your healing process, because I'm not 100% sure what your father has done to you. That's between you and God. That's just between you two. So whatever level of emotional baggage and trauma that you are carrying from your father, only you know what that is. And depending on how much it is will determine of how much you have to heal. The more pain, the more trauma you have to deal, the more it's going to take for you to heal. So do not rush your healing process. Do not think it's been so many years, why don't I? Healing is not linear. Healing is not something to be rushed. Healing is something for us to take our time in. So forgive your father for what he did, for he knows not what he does. He did not realize and was not aware that he was reacting from his flesh. He did not have the emotional maturity to know what he was doing. His lack of empathy didn't realize what he was causing you. Look at him as human. Take your emotions out of it and look at your father as human. Even look at your father as a child himself. Get a higher perspective. Overstand all that your father has went through and why it caused him to behave this way. And this will allow you to give him grace. Now, after you've given him grace, you've forgiven him for what you've done. What you decide to do with the relationship with your father is entirely up to you. If you decide that you want to love your father from a distance, or you want to not speak to your father anymore, if that's the case, you have every right to do so. Because what you need to do for yourself and your peace is up to you. You don't have to stay in contact with people if you don't want to. But what you do need to do is to heal the pain and to forgive them. Because if you do not heal and you do not forgive, it will cause resentment and pain within you, and you will start to project that pain onto your partner, and you will project that pain onto your children. You will repeat a cycle that was done to you. And if you don't want to repeat that cycle, heal and forgive. The key to healing is love. I really hope this video was helpful for you, and I wish you so much love and prosperity on your healing journey. You are not alone. I love you.